These fools, they'll never learn.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. I have an exciting one for you today. This is just a very small intro. I was able to sit down with Eric Jacobus, the founder, the grandfather of the Stunt People, and possibly the grandfather of independent martial arts cinema as we know it. I mean, there were a number of groups back then doing this, but Eric, yeah, he has a firm place in kind of the Mount Rushmore of independent martial arts cinema. So if you don't know Eric, please look up the Stunt People. Please look up Rope-a-Dope and look up Contour, for example. That's his feature-length film, as well as Death Grip or Death Grips. I can't remember whether it's plural or singular, but please look up his stuff. He's here to talk about martial arts cinema, talk about his history of martial arts cinema, his likes, his loves, and he discusses his book, which is called If These Fists Could Talk. I actually don't have a copy in front of me. It's over there. Forgot to bring it for this video, but this is just an intro. I show it plenty of times throughout the video. Get into his book, read it. It is fascinating. Not only does it tell Eric's kind of life story and how he got into martial arts and martial arts cinema, but it also tells us about his brand new theory. I shouldn't say brand new theory. It's a theory. It's a scientific theory, a philosophical theory that Eric has created on violence and how human violence differs from animal violence. It's super fascinating. Please find this book. Please read it. It's on Amazon right now, If These Fists Could Talk. Honestly, I read the whole thing. It's a very short read. I read the whole thing in about 2 days. Breezed through it and found it increasingly fascinating. You don't have to be a scientist or a philanthropist or an archaeologist or an anthropologist to understand his theory. He lays it out in very simple terms. Anyway, this intro is going on way too long. Point is, I was able to sit down with Eric Jacobus, who I've looked up to for years and years. I was late coming to the Stunt People, but when I finally did discover them, I really got into them in a heavy way. And yeah, he's like the king of this stuff for me. This independent martial arts cinema, he starts, like, in my eyes, he was the first one I knew of doing this stuff online. And anyway, point being, I was able to sit down with him and actually talk to him for a good length of time. And I think we could have talked for another 3 hours, to be honest. It was that good of a conversation. So here we go. My interview, my Kungfusation with Eric Jacobus. Check it out. Let's see. All right. Oh, we are recording. I should have told you that. So I'll just jump in. Basically, with my first question. Secretly, I know the answer to this, but that's because I've read your book. But I would like to ask you how you got into martial arts cinema, and who was it that opened the door for you coming into the genre?
Wow, I think the first fight scene I ever saw was Return of the Pink Panther.
Okay.
And it's such a great one because it's where Clouseau, it's a oneer. The movie's beautiful. It's a oneer. Clouseau's going into his house and Kato jumps out of a fridge. He's
I should do.
It's a genius scene, and I think that maybe that set the tone for me. I mean, my parents would always watch comedies.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, and we were big on comedy, and so a lot of vaudeville, a lot of Jackie Chan. A lot of Charlie Chaplin. We didn't do Jackie Chan. You know, I was in a small town, so we just didn't really know about those things too much. You know.
Same here.
But
I'm from a tiny town.
Yeah, but we did get Bruce Lee. There were Bruce Lee movies because
okay.
Enter the Dragon was for all intents and purposes, it was a Hollywood movie. And so I saw that, but I don't think it clicked quite so much as something like the Pink Panther, and Big Trouble in Little China was another one that really. I watched that. I probably watched that when I was way too young. It was really, those movies really kind of made me, but I didn't really get the bug of filmmaking or even martial arts. Really, I had like very little interest in doing martial arts. I was much more into playing video games, weightlifting. And I was a computer programmer when I was 15. So I was, I just wasn't really like in that circle of, martial arts. I never competed or did anything like that. And I guess you could say I was a pretty introverted kid. I was only child. There were summers when I was in my preteens, even when I just spent the entire summer alone at home while my parents worked. And that was fine. Like, I watched Wayne's World on repeat. I memorized the movie front to back. I could still recite the whole thing. I could recite the Cantonese. I didn't even know what it meant. I even got that part right. And so I don't know. I guess like I wasn't very good with people growing up. Never did team. I did a little bit of team sports. Wasn't very good at it. And so I just sort of kept to myself.
Yeah.
And I think, when I was programming it, that was kind of the ideal job for me because I could just kind of work within my little bubble, and I wanted to, I kind of did an accelerated math program in my school. I was finishing up calculus before I left high school, and I wanted to work in a particle accelerator, but that all changed when, late one night, Jackie Chan's Police Story was on USA Network for some reason. And again, like I think by then, Rumble in the Bronx had been at the video store.
Yeah.
Mr. Nice Guy, I think, even came out at the theater. So I knew Jackie Chan, but I didn't know this Jackie Chan, like 1980s Jackie Chan. I'd never seen anything like that. And there was just something about the way that people moved in the final fight. That's all I could see at the time. That was like where I clicked onto the channel. You moved the little channel selector thing. I went to channel 17. It was midnight, and it was the mall fight in Police Story. And I just watched it, and I was transfixed on it. And I was like thinking, man, these guys are fighting, and they're doing stuff that it's like they're doing things in a different language almost. It just felt so foreign and so new.
Yeah.
And that just fascinated me, man. And I was like, well, I kind of want to understand how these people think to move like that, because I wanted to understand people. I just never quite knew how to approach the issue of getting to know how people work. And I kind of came at it from that angle. I was like, I know, what if I do that? I'll start to understand how these people think. And that was sort of like, it was just this obsession in my head to understand how you even move like that.
Yeah.
And then the next thing I got was Drunken Master 2, which was a $35 VHS from Tai Sang. And then I said, okay, I have to try my hand at this because there's something here. And I picked up a camcorder, and when I was 18, I dropped my computer programming job. This might be interesting to your audience too. From when I was 16, I actually I started reviewing these Hong Kong movies. I would take my paychecks from my job. I was a coder at the community college, and I go to Chinatown like every other weekend, which is like a 5-hour drive. And I just do a turnaround on Saturday. Yeah, I do a turnaround. I just go 5 hours there, go to Chinatown, find as many video CDs as I could. They didn't even know what I was looking for half the time because, you couldn't really even research that stuff online back then.
No. That's so interesting that I have a similar story in that I'm from a small town in North Wales in the UK, and we didn't have any stores or anything near us that sold it. Nothing. So literally it came about for me in the kind of VHS era, where my brother just introduced me to the first Drunken Master, which set me on my path. But likewise, I didn't have the internet. There was no way I could research them. So I had to go about an hour into another town to go to the local video store and start picking up VHSs.
Yeah, well, there you go. Same kind of idea.
Yeah.
And, I did have the internet. I could tell you in 1998, there were no websites. There were like three websites. There were 3 websites that reviewed Hong Kong action films. There was Ron Lim, there was Project J, and then there was like one other one. I can't remember what it was called.
Was that Kung Fu Cinema? Was that around?
I think Kung Fu Cinema was around. Yeah, they were doing it too. And that's all I could go off of. And then even those, it was like the titles were kind of off. Sometimes like Ron Lim would review the wrong movie, but whatever. I'd get a stack of video CDs from Chinatown.
Yeah.
Bring them back, and none of these things had been reviewed anywhere a lot of the time. I found like Ben Lamb's Angry Ranger, and I was like, what is this? This is like a Jackie Chan stunt team movie that nobody has talked about.
No.
I had like weird contacts and like throughout America who would send me VHS tapes like, hey, I found this clip, found this. Awesome. And and so as I posted these, reviews online, I had a forum there too, and people started gathering on the forum, and we would just talk Hong Kong action films and debate and get in arguments about the best martial art films and whether or not Jackie Chan has stunt doubles.
Yes, of course, of course,
And
the age-old argument.
yeah. I mean, back when we wondered, right?
Yes, yes.
And yeah, at a certain point, after doing that for 2 years, I reviewed like 250 movies and thought, well, why don't I just try this now? Because I kind of know how this works. I mean, I've been watching these fights and analyzing them. I analyze them like frame by frame. I was trying to pick out the stuntmen, and it was very, again, it was very like a very introverted kind of.
Can I ask though, was that and actually I had this question written down. Was the analyzing or kind of absorbing of fight scenes, did that detract from the enjoyment, or was that part of the enjoyment, just kind of analyze, or was it like, was the analyzing of the fight scenes work and then you kind of took pleasure just watching them? Was there a difference there?
Yeah, I loved analyzing the fights, but I think at that point I was just not mature enough to enjoy the whole movie. so it's
sense.
like I would watch a great Hong Kong action film, like there would be a great Hong Kong action film with like okay action scenes, and I would think, oh, this is garbage. And I remember reviewing I think it was Tai Chi 2.
Okay.
And I was just so hard on it because I just didn't like the wires and there's all this. And then I think it was Simon Wyndham who emailed me, and he was like, that's a good movie, man. Like you should back up a little bit. So I was really kind of in that like extreme sort of analysis mode. So
yeah,
I like to think I've matured a little bit now. I can kind of enjoy movies despite action being bad, but at the time, like that's just where I was at. Like,
yeah,
I wanted to analyze this. I wanted to understand this movement style, and I wanted to do it. And okay, I've done this. I've done these reviews for years now, and let's just go out and do it. And I had a couple friends. I had one from high school who was a camera guy, and I met my main fight guy at a Blockbuster when I was looking for Dreadnought. He was looking for Magnificent Butcher.
Wow.
I had Magnificent Butcher. He had Dreadnought.
Oh,
so
fantastic.
we traded and we stood there talking for 3 hours like this.
Wow.
He's like the only guy in my town probably who knew what those movies were. And I was like, I'm going to fight you on camera because he had martial art experience. And that's how it started.
Wow. That's amazing, because to me, you did the one thing that all us Kung Fu cinema Hong Kong action fans did. You actually did it. And I think I had a question in my head of, especially after reading your book, was, do you think it takes something special in someone to be able to do that, to be able to analyze a fight scene and then mirror it, or take the concepts and adapt them? Because when I was a kid, I can tell you, I couldn't do it. I tried and I couldn't do it.
I think we all see different things in these action scenes.
Right.
Like my camera guy would see like the lighting, he would see the composition, he would see like set design and things, and I would just shut him down to be like, no, we're fighting. You hold a wide shot and we fight, and that's it. And I was very like, I was so one track minded about it, and so and then like some of the other guys, they saw the acting, right? They saw the performance. For me, I saw it like there's this mechanical. It's almost like when you buy Legos, and you buy like the Millennium Falcon Lego kit, right? You buy that, and there's a certain kind of guy who gets the Millennium Falcon Lego kit and says, we are only building the Millennium Falcon, and it's going to be exactly by the directions.
Yeah.
I think more people are like that now, but I think when I was a kid, actually more people were like, like, whatever, I'll buy the thing and I'll just mix them up and make whatever I want.
Right.
And people see different things, right? There's like, oh, I want to make it blue. I want to
absolutely.
I want to put more laser guns on it or something.
Yeah.
And so, when I don't think there is an it when it comes to like, do you have what it takes to, it's like, well, you look at like Robert Rodriguez, for example.
Yeah.
Look at how Robert Rodriguez, how his filmmaking style was influenced by Hong Kong cinema. Was he doing kung fu fights? No. He was doing westerns with Hong Kong style montage editing, right?
Absolutely.
You look at how, oh my gosh, the director of Mad Max, please help me.
George Miller.
George Miller, how he, he was influenced by Hong Kong cinema, his montage style and the way that, and the intensity. You look at the way that this style of filmmaking influenced everybody. It's very different depending on who you are,
Yeah.
And I think that's the beautiful thing about it, that I think most anybody can watch a Hong Kong action movie, a martial art film, and find something beautiful to take from it and bring into their own sort of art.
Yeah, that's I always say people sometimes laugh at me because I say there's a visual poetry in the action, especially in Hong Kong cinema. And just like poetry, where you can read a line three different ways, three different people can read a line three different ways, you kind of get that with action as well. Some people take this away from it, some people take that away from it. Yeah, there's definitely an aspect of interpretation to it.
Yeah. But I would say, if you're talking specifically about the performance, choreography, the camera and editing, I mean, I targeted a specific type of action, and I think a
Okay.
lot of us did. A lot of us really kind of honed in on the Sammo Hung and Corey Yun and maybe Yun Mo Ping's style of shooting and fighting.
Yeah.
It's very hard to do the actual Jackie Chan style. Usually, when people do a Jackie Chan style, it's kind of a hybrid because Jackie Chan doesn't do that many shots. Uh, it's a tripod. It's a tripod shot. He'll pan. That's about
Right.
it. It's wide and it's really hard, man. It's really hard to do action like that. You're vulnerable. You feel butt naked doing
Right.
those shots. And so the tendency is like, well, let's bring it in close and get a close up. Then you start going into Sammo Hung territory where it's like that's actually like the montage style that's very Hong Kong.
Right.
And so I would kind of go for that. And 15 years of that, and I made Rope-a-Dope, and Rope-a-Dope is basically that kind of mesh between the Jackie and Sammo. So
Yeah.
what does it take to do that? I think one person's individual skill only goes so far, not even halfway. And here's why I say that. That kind of action is a relationship. There's just no other way to describe it. Anytime Jackie Chan talks about his team, it's all about the relationship that he has with these guys. And he trusts the people he's working with, because in order to do that kind of action, you both have to run and hit a mark and kind of cooperate to look like you're killing each other.
Yes.
And it's really hard to do that with people you don't know. It's really hard, man. And so that's why they had really tight crews that could design that action, which comes from the opera troupe, right? And this is the same thing with any live performance troupe, is that when you fight together on stage for years, you know exactly how far the other guy is away from you. You know exactly, if I do a round off back tuck and he swings under me, he's not going to hit me. And like, you can just do that all day. But as soon as you get a new person in there, it's like, whoa, are you going to, if you throw up, if I throw a punch, are you going to duck in time? It's really hard. And so it's really hard to do that action. So you could be top notch, but if you don't have the relationship with your team, you're nothing.
Yeah, I guess I never really thought about. Obviously, you hear Jackie Chan talk about his stunt team glowingly, but I guess I never considered that the familiarity with a stunt team that you work with is kind of a lot. It means a lot, and it brings a lot to the screen, I guess, in general, rather than two strangers, I suppose, or not strangers, but people less familiar with each other working together might not have that chemistry or that gelling on screen. That's really interesting.
Then you'll need a coordinator on top of that. Then, like, the only time Jackie really was like out of his element was when he was working with Sammo.
Right.
Well, there were other times too, but the time when Jackie could shine and be out of his element was under Sammo, because Sammo knew how to push him against somebody else, and he knew how to push him and Benny the Jet against each other.
Yeah.
And I think Jackie trusted Sammo.
Right.
I assume he trusted Benny the Jet, but his trust of Sammo is probably enough.
Yeah. I mean, and it's interesting that it's Sammo who gave Jackie some of the best fights of his career. I mean, you take even people talk about the Benny fights, you know, Dragons Forever and Wheels on Meals. But if you take even something like the finale of Heart of Dragon, for
Totally.
example,
Way, yeah.
it's nuts, and people don't often talk about that one, but that finale in the like building site or construction site is just, and Sammo, yeah, I think you're right, just knew what to do with Jackie sometimes where Jackie wasn't willing to push the envelope a little bit, maybe.
I think so, yeah. And yeah, whenever Jackie is fighting under Sammo, you can kind of tell that Jackie is under a master because he fights like a fighter, you know?
Right.
It's different. He's just, that's the only way you can describe it, is it's different.
Yeah, I can certainly see that. It's strange to me also how some people don't see that. I'm not being, you know, patronizing or pretentious here. I find it interesting the number of people I've come across who've said, "Oh, Dragons Forever, directed by Jackie Chan." Well, no, nice try, but it's not quite there. It's different. There are differences between Sammo and Jackie's style, and some people don't pick up on that. Were you a I guess I associate you with more like I suppose like the 80s kickboxing style of Hong Kong action. Did you ever dabble in the old school like shapes styles, like, you know, your mantis and your eagle claw, or did you not go that way? Was that not too interesting to you?
I tried, and it always looked bad. When I met, so kind of going off what I was saying earlier, you know, I was building a crew throughout those years with the stunt people with my team, and like our crew was, it was really a social club
Yeah.
in every you know respect. You know, when I moved to the Bay Area, I mean, Sundays was like social day where we would do stunt practice starting at noon, and
Hmm.
we would go for hours. We would do stunt ball, we'd play card games, we'd practice choreography, we'd spar, we'd take martial arts class, we'd spar some more, we'd spar, we'd
Wow.
fight each other, we'd hit each other in the face. You know, that's how we learned. The girls didn't like that part so much, but but and then around 8 o'clock, you know, we moved out, went to get dinner. We'd eat until the place closed. We'd stand outside from midnight until 1 a.m. like talking, and then so we were a social group. And so I mentioned that because like some of the guys that that I was starting to work with, like Ed Kahana, for example, he was wushu trained.
Mm.
And I had tried to do shapes with the Reading crew, and nobody in the Reading crew had that kind of, there's a language to that, you know.
Right.
And you can't just be one person doing it. And then I could do it with Ed,
Hmm.
and we did that in Contour, and then we did it in this little fight scene which is still online. It's called Shapely Heroes. And
Oh.
it was just this, like, you know, 1 minute of bliss when I could kind of like Ed and I could just do shapes together, and it's like, oh, it's a relationship. It's all about relationships. So
Yeah.
I think with shapes too, the thing that people probably don't realize until they try and do it is that, like, if you don't commit, it's like you have to cosplay like you're in Beijing Opera.
Yeah.
It's weird. It's like you have to go into this other kind of mindset. Like if you're going for the kill every time, it doesn't work. It's weird.
Right. Right.
You
No,
know?
that makes sense because I think a lot of this probably doesn't make sense, but I'm trying to explain it. There's a lot in shapes. I feel like there's a lot of hovering in the middle.
Yeah.
Like there's no, like there could be a shapes fight where someone doesn't get hit for
Yeah.
5 minutes, 10 minutes, and it's just constant blocking and exchanging of blows, and it's all in the middle rather than you get hit, you get hit. It kind of floats in the. If that does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean that's what makes the shape, right? Like
Right.
you could argue that the people are making shapes, but it's really that center, like you said.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. That's. I think you're absolutely right, and people sometimes, especially in I see some modern filmmakers, let's say, I don't know what to call it, amateur filmmakers, for example, like on people on YouTube doing like shapes fights, and they don't quite get it right. There's an imbalance there that just doesn't quite work. And yeah, it's only when you get it right that that's truly, you know, mwah, that perfect, you know.
Yeah.
And of course, the greats did it, you know, Yu Wu Ping Samo,
Of
they knew.
course. I mean, these are people who are raised in opera, right? They breathed opera, and and also, by the way, like, you have to understand what opera is to even think about shapes. And all opera kind of comes from this like ritual theater. And you would have, if it's in northern China and during the Qing dynasty, there'd be a factory that would, have some kind of a ghost, and so they bring a priest, and he would do like the 9-step or whatever it is, or you might bring a puppet. You'd do shadow play, and yeah, it would bring a crowd. Sometimes you do it alone. That too, people don't know that. Like, he would be in there alone doing shapes, and like it looks like a kung fu form, but I think, like, first and foremost, these were these like shamanistic, very ritual movements that are like ultimately no different than, an Australian Aboriginal, rain dance or a kangaroo dance or anything like that. And those are animal styles too. And so I think, like, we have this kind of new myth. I'm gonna anger a lot of people right now. We have a new myth that animal martial arts was all about self-defense and warfare. And that actually makes it very difficult to perform it. You can justify it as martial arts, but if you don't think about it in its ritual context, it's actually very hard to do. You're thinking about it in terms of cooperating with your opponent to make the best shape.
Yes, exactly. That because it's funny, you get all the naysayers, right, saying, "Oh, this is bullshit." Kung fu doesn't work in a real fight scenario, and you look at it like how you just described it as maybe not coming from that root at the end of the day. Then it was never for combat. Granted, there were people along the way who kind of shaped it into their combat style, but originally, perhaps it was just theatricality, and that was it.
Yeah. Again, like, the thing is, the record is actually pretty sparse on this stuff. The anthropological record, when it comes to warfare and martial arts, it doesn't really have much to say aside from, some like iron shirt cults, and there were some like dragon style groups, but like these always have kind of fortune telling aspects. Like, the performative aspect is much more about divination and divination and whatever it might be, and far less about defending yourself against a knife, right? Like, if you wanted to defend yourself against a knife, you got a knife. The triads knew that. And so, yeah, I mean, again, we won't go too far down that, because I don't want to like burst people's bubbles about the true origins of mantis style kung fu or anything, because I'm going to get a lot of hate for that. But I will stand by that in the end. But I think you're right that in the West we tend to secularize everything. We tend to look at everything as like, oh, what was the use of that? Like, how did that cut down a tree? Like, how was that good for lifting up buckets or something? And it's like, well, a lot of the time that actually wasn't the purpose. The purpose was to resolve plague by propitiating gods, or to keep down some kind of health crisis by like preventing ghosts from wandering, right? Things like that. And if you're cynical about this, you think, well, that's just a bunch of crap, then I'm sorry, the way is kind of blocked for you. You may not actually understand this stuff. So
yeah, that's really interesting as well, because I think some people will watch an old school kung fu film, meaning, let's say pre 1980 kung fu film, and think, oh, this is bullshit because I'm not seeing the combat in it. I'm not seeing the real world application of it. And it's like, can't you see beyond that? Can't you see the actual poetry of the movement and the like you say, language that these two people are speaking to one another in perfect synchronicity? Yeah, it's beyond me. Maybe I'm, again, obviously I love this stuff and I will always love this stuff, so I'm slightly biased, but I just, sometimes it's just slightly beyond me. Like, my wife doesn't see it. She can enjoy a fight scene, but she doesn't quite see the language, the beauty. I think the word is beauty I'm looking for. She doesn't quite see it, which is fascinating to me. But I guess that's the same with everything. Someone will listen to a song and not hear it the same way as someone else. It's interpretation. I have to ask a kind of blatant question that kind of trivializes things a little bit. But did you ever have like a favorite style that you liked to see on screen that you're like, oh, the movement, the patterns of that is particularly interesting?
No,
No.
I always, but I was always fascinated by the Hong Kong guys who could kick really well. Because traditional Chinese martial arts doesn't really have those kicks. They have some, right?
Yeah.
They have the sort of sweeping kicks, so they have the stretch kicks. But again, these are, you know, much more operatic.
Yes.
And less from, you know, the Korean and Japanese styles. And so whenever you saw, you know, like a Bruce Liang or you know, a Billy Chow, you always, or like any of those great kickers. One that blew my mind was Cho Wing. Not many people know who this guy was. He's one of the villains in The Line of Duty 4. He's the guy with the long hair at the end.
Oh yeah.
He's the smaller guy that Yumo Ping's the main character fights.
Mm-hmm.
And he could always kick so well. He did this movie, The Red Wolf. He's got a fight in a weight room, and he kicks so well. And I did an interview with Andy Chang on my podcast. Or was it? It might have been someone else. Anyway, I'll credit Andy Chang anyway. And I said, "What was with that dude? Like, how did that guy know how to kick like that?" He's like, "Oh yeah, he just watched tapes, and then he'd go to the park and just like train it." And I'm like, "These fools could mimic the best kickers in the world and pull it off in a park." That's a different level. But that's what that operatic kind of training would do.
But isn't that what you did, in essence?
Kind of. I mean, it took me a long time. But you know what? I really couldn't kick until I took Taekwondo. I had to take Taekwondo.
Yeah, I think I was reading your book, and the fact that you didn't start off as a martial artist, kind of, I was my jaw was agape on that one. I was really surprised because I just didn't expect it. But the fact that you kind of went on this journey and then learned martial arts, I mean, that's commitment though, right? You put in your effort and you did the work needed. A lot of people don't go that far, and I think that's the important part. Yeah, I think super kickers have always interested me because they are just the guys that can do something that I literally can't even get near. You know, my kicks, obviously I'm not a martial artist. I'm a bigger guy. My kicks look horrendous. They're terrible. I'm not a kicker. I'm not a puncher either, but I'm not much of a kicker. And to see these guys on screen do things that just, you know, just I can't comprehend them. You know, someone like why can't I think of his name though? Who's the Korean? Not Hwang Chang-li.
No, Casanova.
No, not Casanova. The Operation Scorpio. Why
Kim
can't
Won-jin.
That's it, Kim Won-jin. I kept thinking of Won Jing for some reason, the director. Yeah. But yes, he does things with his legs that I can't comprehend. It's like he can float sometimes, and just seeing that on screen, same with Hwang Chang-li, really, seeing him on screen do what he does. I don't know, kickers are always great as well, because like you said, you can always find a quote unquote secret kicker, like one you haven't come across before that's all of a sudden amazing. I think Benny Chan was wait, is it Benny Chan?
No, he's the director.
Who am I thinking? Benny, Jackie Chan stunt team. The deaf mute guy from Police Story 2.
Oh yeah, Benny Lai.
Benny Lai, thank you. Oh my god, these names are going out of my head today. Yeah, Benny Lai's another one. He's got a hell of a good legs on him, and you don't realize until like he's in that scene in Police Story 2. Like, who is this guy? I've never come across him before.
That was Andy Chang's big brother in Taekwondo.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So people don't know this too, that you look at like around the time of Project A, 1982, and then 1984 with Wheels on Meals. You watch Jackie and Yun-Bu and Sammo too. Sammo could kick, man. Like,
yeah.
Like, so, and people think that like, oh, that's that opera training. Well, from what I understand, they took Hapkido after working on films like, well, the Hapkido movie, When Taekwondo Strikes, because Sammo was working on those. And, Jian Jay came to do Game of Death. So Hapkido really started making the rounds in the Hong Kong stunt circles, and they started taking Hapkido. And back, in Korea and in Asia, Hapkido is a very multifaceted martial arts system. In America, it tends to just be throws. And I think maybe in Europe it's similar, but the Hapkido that I took, because I did Taekwondo and then I started taking Hapkido. The Hapkido I took under Dennis Rule, who just recently passed.
Yeah, that's so sad.
Ray Carbonell, Troy Carbonell. That Hapkido has amazing kicks, and they're a little bit different too.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, well, to me, that's real Hapkido. Because it's got kicks. It's like, it's Korean. It's got to have kicks. And so that was the thing that Jackie, Samo, and Yunbu were doing. Yunhua also, I assume. Those kicks don't come from Chinese martial arts. They come from Korea and Japan.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people would be upset hearing that as well for some reason.
I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
I have to burst this bubble too. Like, Bruce Lee did not learn his kicks from Wing Chun. Bruce Lee, it's kind of hard to know where exactly he got his kicks from. I have a feeling, this is my personal theory, that when he was on, so he went on set for, I guess it was on When Taekwondo Strikes, because and Wong Yin-sik was there. I have a feeling Wong Yin-sik, who's the villain in Young Master and Dragon Lord, and also an amazing Hapkido kicker.
Fantastic.
The way that guy could throw a spinning heel kick back then, 1972, 1973. Nobody did that back then. Nobody.
Yeah.
You find one. Find one. Nobody. And I have a feeling that that haunted Bruce Lee. It was like, that is the most cinematic kick ever put on film. I have to be able to do that. I don't think he ever quite got it. But I think that haunted him. Yeah, that haunted him. He was a great kicker in a lot of ways, but like he was training with Americans.
Yes.
In like Long Beach and in SoCal to get those kicks. So shoot me down, go ahead. But no, he was training with Americans who had brought Korean Tang Soo Do and Taekwondo from Korea during the Korean War and the Vietnam War.
Yeah.
Chuck Norris being one of them. And you watch Chuck Norris sparring, 1967, he's doing spinning back kicks that are laser straight. 1967. So I just want to set the record straight, Bruce Lee was amazing because what he did was he took that kick and cinematized it.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
And that was his obsession.
Yeah. For anyone who doesn't know out there who's watching, Wing Chun has very few, if any, kicks above the waist. So every time you see Bruce Lee kick high, it ain't Wing Chun, and it's never been Wing Chun. So there you go. Were you? How do you feel about Bruce Lee? Are you a big Bruce Lee fan in general, or was he never really one that you went to often?
I think now that I'm a dad, I'm more of a Bruce Lee fan.
Okay.
There's something about his attitude that I really like now. And I can see the genius now that I couldn't see growing up. That I mean, like just the fights in Enter the Dragon in the prison scene. I always thought that those were kind of special because, he had Robert Klaus just set up a camera. And I don't know what the limitation was, but for whatever reason, there's no editing in these fights down there. They're like straight up Chambara style fights. You know what I mean? Like the camera's there. He walks in. In. And then boom, boom, the big fight happens. And then maybe a zoom.
Yeah.
Another hit. Walks off camera. Okay, cool. That's like 30 seconds. And then next scene. Walks in. Camera's over here. Same thing. It does it like 8 times.
Yeah.
And who knows why they shot it that way. But that felt like, okay, this is the Bruce Lee style. This is this like perfect combination of Japanese filmmaking, American kind of set design, and American power, I guess, and like the Hong Kong flavor thrown in. And I couldn't see that back then. Now I do. And I really love it now. I love watching his stuff. I did a Bruce Lee, that was my first video essay on my channel. And I really think that you gotta credit that guy with making the kick cinematic. I think without him, because he was that guy was a filmmaker, and he's got all these backyard films that he shot on his video camera.
Yeah,
and I think that he was testing angles to see what angles looked best for certain kicks.
Yeah, that's amazing. It took me a while to really warm up to Bruce. I saw Bruce at a young age, probably before I saw Jackie Chan. Actually, maybe if I watched Jackie Chan when I was 12, I watched Bruce maybe 9 years old, and it did nothing for me. I was just like, okay, thanks, great. I've seen an action film, an action like Arnold Schwarzenegger. It was like every other person, Sylvester Stallone, Arnold Schwarzenegger. But it wasn't until Jackie and Drunken Master that really was just like, okay, this is the one for me. And and it went on. It went on from there. Sadly, my second purchase, I've said this on the podcast before, but sadly, my second purchase was Shaolin Red Master, a completely random title that it starred Chi Kwan Chun. And I just randomly picked, because I didn't know what to buy. I didn't know what I was buying. So I just picked that one up, and it's so-so.
Don't know that one.
But you as fans of the genre, you probably know as good as I do or anyone else does, you come across a fair share of duds. It's just the way, but the good stuff is really, really good. Were you ever interested in gunplay at all, like the John Woo and the heroic bloodshed, or were you all about the fisticuffs?
I don't know. I think the John Woo stuff has kind of grown on me. I enjoyed the Killer and Hard Boiled. Those have just never really been my thing.
Yeah,
it's like the spaghetti western. Also, my grandpa would watch westerns, and I don't know. I just didn't care. Sorry, I
can't do westerns. I don't like westerns at all for some reason.
Even to this day, like I can appreciate it, but I just can't. I just doesn't do it for me. Yeah. So but like a lot of John Woo's action was very inspired by American gunplay. Like, I mean, you can't get reference for that stuff in Hong Kong,
right?
Because people don't have guns there. For
the
police.
Yeah, that's a good point. He didn't just conjure it out of his brain one day. I guess he had to see something and be influenced by something. Oh, that's fascinating. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. They don't have guns. That's really interesting. Yeah, I would love to know what his influences are. I don't think I've ever come across like an interview where he said, but I would love to hear it. That's interesting that the gunplay wasn't anything for you, that it was mainly just kind of the martial arts. Did you appreciate weapons, though? Weapons forms and weapons fights and things like that?
So. Yeah, even then I was such a like one-track minded kind of guy. I like it now, but back then not really. I mean, the weapons movies I did like were The Blade. Loved that movie.
Okay, that's an interesting choice. So that's very frenetic film, very kind of not like a single camera with just stuff. It's all over the place. That film, interesting. Okay. It interests me that you didn't like Tai Chi 2, but you liked The Blade, which is
yeah, I know.
But I think we all do that. I think I used to say I hated wire work, and then I would love the Once Upon a Time in China films.
So. Oh, I love it now. Like I mean, it's the same with Bourne, right? I used to hate Bourne action, and now now when I watch Bourne action, I just go, okay, this is a different emotional experience that I'm going to go into, and then I can enjoy it. Same with a Blomkamp movie. Same with whatever it's going to be. But I just wanted to make my mark with the human movement.
Yes,
and that was the first priority for me.
Yeah, I've spoken to a few people in conversations like this, especially filmmakers and choreographers and things and action directors who have said that they're not a big fan of any of the modern style of action. Whether it's your John Wicks or, whichever, they all kind of use that style now. They all borrowed it from John Wick. Are you big on the John Wick? Can you appreciate the John Wick style? Or are you kind of, oh, no, I don't care for that modern judo type style?
You have to appreciate what that did for the genre, I think, at the very least. We do this thing at my company called Movie Night Day, where we watch an action movie usually, or an animation maybe, and we just sort of watch it so that, I'm the only stuntman that works in my company. I've got a set tech who's more on the video production side. I've got an animator. I've got a programmer, and then my business partner who's much more the producer. And when we watch action movies, we all see different things. And so I get to kind of watch movies through people's eyes now, which is really important when you're in the business. And, in my business, I'm trying to design action for clients. Right. And so a lot of the time the client's got an idea of what the action looks like. And I need to be able to understand what they're seeing. And so when we watch these movies, I have kind of two scores now that I give them, which is, how good is the movie and its museum rating.
Okay.
Right? Like, it might be a crap film, but there's a museum rating where it's like it belongs in an exhibit.
Yes.
Right? And I think John Wick hits both pretty well, because John Wick is I don't know. I don't know why people don't like John Wick. I guess maybe I'm not sure. I don't get it. They can chime in, but I think that the gags are fantastic,
Yeah.
and the what I love especially is just the way that it looks. Like,
Yeah.
that's one of the most high concept action films you can dream. I mean, it was like, remember The Matrix, right? And everybody just, we all completely blew our loads when we saw The Matrix, because it's like, here's a kung fu movie done for millions of dollars.
Yeah.
Who would have thought? Like, it seems impossible. It's like, and then John Wick just takes that to another level, and every set is beautiful, and that's because Chad is very visual, kind of architecturally, oriented kind of guy, and I th- I appreciate that every scene's got a gag.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
That's, I don't know. That's huge. You just have to understand. There is kind of like I would describe it as a Greek quality to John Wick, which is, it's very all or nothing. Compare it to Takeshi Kitano, right? Takeshi Kitano, he'll do an action scene where it's a minute or two of talking, and there's one move, and there's a big, long kind of tapering off of what happens after that move.
Yeah.
The guy's mouth is bleeding, and he's complaining or whatever, or whatever it is, right? And it's this very, like, it kind of shows you that gray area between violence and non-violence.
Yeah. Okay.
And in John Wick, it's like on or off. You're either fighting and you're alive, or you're dead. And there's not much in between.
No, you're right.
I don't know how many times John Wick is shot like a random NPC in that movie, for example, and they've fallen to the ground and go like, okay, stop. I've had enough. No. And there's like a moment. There's not a whole lot of that. It's all kind of like about the aesthetic of the movement.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
that's why I would say it's very kind of Greek in a certain way, even because that's like the sculpture kind of quality of it.
Yeah, I agree. I never even thought about it that way. That it is, John Wick is all or nothing. Like, it's either pedal to the floor, or it's kind of not got much else. I mean, obviously it's best when the action is being rolled out, but the smaller, quieter moments, it's not really why people are watching John Wick. But the world that's created and kind of the aesthetic of the world is incredible. Chad Stahelski has one hell of a kind of cinematic eye on him. Which I've always appreciated.
And aren't Hong Kong action films like that too? Like, the fight is going, it's 100%, 100%, 100%, and then the final guy gets the death blow, he goes, and he's dead. You could punch him in the nuts, and he'll spit blood and die.
Yes.
It's also very all or nothing. So
yes,
we can't pretend like this is something we're not used to.
no, it's definitely not new to us. Yeah, that's very true. That's very true, because a lot of us just watch those kung fu films for the fights. We didn't care what went on when it wasn't fighting.
Okay, so think about the ethical implications for a minute, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's say instead of getting punched in the nuts and blood comes out and you die, instead of that, you get punched in the nuts and you fall back against a chair and you start lamenting how you're not going to have children now. So what is the hero supposed to do, right? And so, like, in the Confucian code of ethics, is he supposed to end your life? Well, that's technically murder. So you have to kill somebody, otherwise they have to keep fighting, right? And this is just a very standard kind of trope, even in a lot of American movies, where you can't have that gray area, because then even to the average viewer, we start to question, like, oh, is the hero doing the right thing now?
Yeah.
And if that's not the movie, then you can't do that. But if the movie is very gray, if you are making a noir, then you can afford that. Then you can afford to do that one move and have this big gray area where, you're kind of wondering, like, oh, is this guy doing the right thing? And maybe that's the point of that film. But I don't think John Wick is about that.
No, I think John Wick is about comeuppance, right? We want the villain, even if the villain's on the floor, shot in the kneecap, going, "Please don't kill me." We want him to get a double tap to the head. It's just, it has to be. That has to come to fruition in John Wick. It just that's the meaning of it, I guess. At the end of the day, you mentioned something in your book. It was actually my favorite part of the book. I'll be honest with you. We'll get. Actually, I should hold it up if you have.
Oh yeah, it's my book right there. If this fits the talk.
If you have not read Eric's book, then what the hell are you doing with your life? Go and get it. It's you mentioned something. You actually mentioned it a number of times. You talk about when you started designing action for video games and performing motion capture. And you blew me away when you supply. And I should mention this actually, Eric. There we go. He provides QR codes to a variety of videos, GIFs, and such throughout the book, which is really helpful. And you put 3 GIFs in the book, which is you doing an American punch, a Japanese punch, and was it Korean punch?
Hong Kong punch.
Hong Kong punch. Sorry. And I was dumbfounded. The fact that they have such a huge difference, and that you had to decipher that and work that out. And there's a whole section of the book where Eric talks about how he basically had to convert it into like sentence kind of structured sentences to be able to work it out. That's something that I guess many of us never consider, that different countries have different styles of action. It's just, oh, you're doing kung fu in this one, or you're doing, I don't know, judo in this one, or whatever it may be. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, I guess the base language of violence changes from region to region, country to country, nation to nation, whatever it may be. But the very base, we all know a punch is a punch at the end of the day. This fist has to hit someone somewhere on their body. That's a punch. But what comes before the punch, whether it's a wind up, whether it's a jab, it changes. And it was so interesting to read that you were so familiar with the Hong Kong punch, and you spoke Hong Kong punch. That's what you refer to. And to see you have to kind of translate that into other styles, which these video game creators wanted, right? They knew, we want a Japanese style, we want a whatever style. And I don't know, there was something about that really stood out to me, in that it's a higher level of action that so many of us don't consider. We say John Wick style action. It's per film. Like a lot of people right now, I don't know if you've seen the Baby Assassins films.
Yeah.
Right. So the style of action that's in the Baby Assassins film, a lot of people are talking about right now. You know, they're kind of saying it's almost the evolution of John Wick style. And we say, oh, that's the Baby Assassin style of action. But whereas there may be a base language that is, no, it's the Japanese style. They do things. And that really, really interests me. It was fascinating.
Do you want me to elaborate on that?
Please jump in. I would love to hear you talk more about that.
So this is something that I put together in the book in the chapter. I think it's called movement language.
Yes.
And so when I think back and I'm watching Jackie Chan and the guys fighting in the mall and Police Story, they're speaking a language. They're moving a language. I don't know how else to describe it, right? And this is something that I think people who don't fight a lot might not appreciate, is that a punch is a punch, but a punch tells a whole story.
Right.
You can derive so much meaning from a punch. Even, you just go onto TikTok or Instagram, you see someone clock somebody in the street. There's always a story.
Yes.
And the comments are so interesting because people are trying to, they make a joke about it, or somebody's like trying to fill in backstory based on that punch. It's just, there's so many ways that you can interpret violence. And I think that this goes against the very kind of, in my view, misconception of violence, that violence is like animalistic or unspeakable. it seems like it's not animalistic at all. And this is something I focus on quite a bit in the book, is sort of trying to demythologize violence, because it's been attributed to animal behavior, when in fact, human violence is infinitely more complicated, because there's always the potential that we're going to pick up an object and use that in combat, and that is just never an option in animal combat. Even when, and when I say combat, I mean, chimp versus chimp, deer versus deer. Even if a chimp is over here smashing a nut with a rock, could be right here doing it, right? And if he gets attacked, he drops this, or at best he'll throw it in order to intimidate, or he might raise it up, or it's a stick. Maybe he's got his termite stick. Again, he's over here. I'm gonna use my nunchucks. Great props.
Perfect.
He's doing termite plumbing, right? And he's eating the termites off the stick. And then somebody comes, drops the stick, starts fighting. So there are every now and then you catch a glimpse of a chimp kind of whacking another one with a stick. There's not really any damage there being done. It's not really combat. It's intimidation. The real combat with chimpanzees and all animals is using their natural weapons.
Yeah.
And that is despite the fact that sometimes they can just use objects for everything else except for combat. And so we tend to think, especially when you get into the more academic writing, which is I researched this stuff for so long because I just wanted to understand it. Academic writing treats violence as if it's animalistic. And I'm looking at violence now going like, well, it's anything but animalistic. It's actually incredibly packed with meaning. Even just to get dark for a minute, even a mass shooting is like filled with meaning. And it's filled with meaning because these people write holy books about their plan. Why I'm shooting all these people? Well, I've got this plan. See, the world has too many people, and I think that we need to blah, blah, blah. They'll have some kind of plan. Or the government's something, right? There's like some plan. And therefore, I have to start killing people. And so, okay, all that's to say, throwing a punch, there is a linguistic element to it, and it has just as much meaning as saying, sir, get off my lawn, right? It has just as much meaning as get off my lawn. The question is, okay, well, when you say get off my lawn, there is a verb, get, off, preposition, my, possessive pronoun, lawn, noun, right? So you can, and with an implied pronoun of you at the beginning, we can like map this into some kind of pattern. Get off my lawn, get out of my house, get off the shed, whatever it is. We have like a pattern, and that's true with every language, right? And some languages like Japanese, they order it differently, where instead of going subject, verb, object, right? You get off lawn, it's subject, object, verb. So it's like you, my lawn. You have to wait until the end in Japanese. That's why you don't want to interrupt the guy. It'd be very rude to interrupt this man before he tells you, off, get off, you, my lawn, get off, because he might tell you to stay on it. You don't know. So Japanese is like structured differently. SOV, subject, object, verb languages are structured differently. They're sort of like non-interruptive in a way. I'm getting to something, trust me. So when it comes to violence, though, and movement, okay, well, we don't really have these buckets. Like, we don't have nouns and adjectives. I guess we have an object. If I the man hit another guy with nunchucks, it's like, yeah, that's kind of a sentence, right? You can sort of figure out what happened, but there's like all the nuances missing.
Right.
I feel like there's like a whole book you could write on a nunchuck attack. And so what I wanted to do was just to break down a movement into a sentence structure, so that when I was doing God of War, so now we're getting into, this is 2015 or so, I went in to do God of War, and I had been doing this Hong Kong style of movement for 15 years. I was very trained at that point. I'd done rope-a-dope 1 and 2, and I felt like I had kind of gotten it at that point. And not just me, but like the whole team had gotten it. Like we were all totally on the same page.
Yeah.
And that's why I say it's a relationship. And so when you're doing the Hong Kong style of movement, it's very rhythmic. It's very, there's a cadence to it so that you can stay on the same page the whole time. If you break rhythm, you start to kind of lose the shape.
Right.
It becomes a different kind of action. So a Hong Kong punch was very much, you start here, wind up, hit, back, right? It's kind of that pacing, right? It's like ha 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 ha. It's that, and
right.
It's like there's almost no variety aside from that. Like you might get a da 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 da. You might get that, but it's still rhythmic, right?
Yes.
And so I went into to do God of War motion capture, and they said, okay, the move is going to be a punch. So I went, ha, ha, and I went back, and they went, ooh, no, that's not even close. You got to move in a very different way. And they showed me how to move in the right way, which was this very different. So there was a whole big buildup. Sometimes there's a double anticipation, like a double buildup. And then the hit had to come in a certain angle. I had to step way before I did the hit, and it would cross like this, and I'd come back to idle after this. This is like the standard process for motion capture. And it felt like I was speaking a different language when I was doing that. The first year of doing that was so difficult because, it was like language immersion.
Yeah.
And the only way I could get through the day was like, okay, I have to like break this move down because it's so different than what I'm used to. And I came up with movement language, which is just 5 pieces of a movement, which is the in point, which would kind of be your fighting stance, right? Anticipation or antic, which is the build up. Hitbox is whatever the move is, the punch.
Right.
When we say a punch is just a punch, it's like that's the part we're talking about is the punch, right? And then there's the recovery. It's everything after the punch.
Yeah.
And then out point is your fighting stance or maybe your next move.
Right.
And technically, every movement has those 5 components, and you can further break each one of those down, obviously. And so as I did that, I found that I was able to do it was an American style of movement. Interestingly, it was my native language that I was relearning. I was being re-immersed into American language. And I noticed that as I was doing it, I started appreciating American action again. Like I went back and watched, Harrison Ford, Indiana Jones movies.
Yeah.
And I never really thought much about those fight scenes. And now I watch them and I'm blown away by how good Harrison Ford moves when he punches. Because he's just full send.
That's so interesting. Yeah.
And I was like, wait a minute, is this like a different language that Americans speak when we punch people? And look, don't get me wrong. I'm sure that in a bar fight, a person in Hong Kong probably punches like someone in America. Right?
Good point.
There's going to be some significant overlap because practicality is going to come into effect there. But the aesthetics of the media itself, it seemed like there was some kind of a pattern here where the Hong Kong style was very cooperative, where we run in. It's like the classic kind of Lau Gao Leung kind of action where they run in, and they kind of go in, and it's beautiful.
Yeah.
The American style is wrecking balls. One person's going to kind of go this way, and then at some point, this wrecking ball is going to win, right? And I win. Right? It's like a wrecking ball, so it's non-cooperative, you could say.
Yeah. Oh, would you say that American fights are then somewhat more one-sided?
Possibly, yeah. I think that if anything, maybe the American fight is more the hand-to-hand fight in American action is much more character-driven.
Yeah,
I would say. Yeah. I think that there's a British equivalent to this.
Really?
Yeah, I think Gareth Evans kind of tapped into that a little bit.
Oh, interesting.
And maybe he's from Wales, so you would know.
Yep.
But there's a certain amount of kind of gangster to it.
Yes, I can definitely see that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like a little bit of like lad culture.
Yeah.
Maybe some Scottish Highlands thrown in. I don't know. There's a lot going on over there. Like y'all have a lot more history than we do over here. Let's just say, at least us whites. But so, and then just to jump ahead, then did God of War, went into Demon Souls, which is a Japanese game, and then I had to relearn how to move again, which was not so much about this big character-driven antic, big hitbox, big recovery, back to idle, like He-Man or like Hulk, but instead it was much more. It was like less character and more on the follow-through pose, which was like, okay, Hong Kong, you have American, you have and then Japanese, you have and then back.
Yeah, it kind of lingers out there a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was totally foreign to me again. And again, I was like, I was being immersed into a language. And then as I got better at that, I started watching samurai films, and I started understanding those and realizing like, oh, wait a minute, when they cut, why are they waiting?
Yeah.
Why do they wait after the cut? What are they doing? Like, they don't do that in Hong Kong cinema. Like, when you cut, you don't wait. Like, you're on to the next thing. And it seems like this comes from a very real place. I wouldn't be surprised if, Chambara films in the 30s and 40s, they had grandfathers who had actually done that stuff.
Yeah.
And I think the same would have been true with a gunslinger film in America, where Westerns, there are probably
good point.
codgers in there that actually seen this stuff happen. Like, now he wouldn't move nothing before he shot, man. No, he just shoot. No blinking, no nothing. You better believe like there was some realism in there.
Oh, I bet. Yeah.
And so just putting it all together then, that Japanese style was very much about the ending, just like the language.
Yeah.
And it's almost designed so that it can't be interrupted.
Yeah, okay.
Because when I took Iaido, I took swordplay, and the entire goal was like, don't show your cards, don't show what you're gonna do, hit and wait. If something happens, hit, wait.
Yeah.
Unless you have a plan, unless you're gonna move on to the next thing, because you might hit and but you've already thought of that before you do hit too. And that is like Japanese language. And the wrecking ball style is like American language, where we're kind of talking over each other. I've said my verb, I've got my object coming up, but you're just going to start talking anyway because you know exactly what I'm talking about. That's an American, table conversation. And in Cantonese, it's very monosyllabic, and it has tones to it, and that's kind of like this Hong Kong style of action.
Yeah, I guess that's. It's just something. I don't know what I'm trying to say here, but I think there's so much to be gleaned, and I'm not trying to say this in the wrong way. So much to glean from violence, in a way, in that it reflects our culture, history, even personal history. Depending on, for example, if you've got PTSD, your reaction to violence or approach to violence is going to be entirely different than someone who doesn't have that. Yeah, I think that's very. It's something people kind of gloss over and don't really think of, especially when it comes to movies and things like that. They don't figure that that's factoring into any element of what's being portrayed on screen. We're just, okay, two guys fighting. Someone just said, you punch, you block, you kick, then you block, and that's it. It's as simple as that. But there's so much that comes into that. Have you found that you now use your movement language when filmmaking? Do you use the same concepts now, or is that purely for like mocap and things like that? Or do you find you use it in every day in everything you do?
Yeah. So, wow. I mean, okay, let me just give you an example of how I use it in mocap for things that you wouldn't think you'd use it in mocap for. Standing around. Okay. So a lot of mocap is idles, where they just need to fill. They kind of need, like, especially if you have an open world game, right? They need to fill it with characters, right? Maybe they're animals, maybe they're zombies, whatever it is, right? So you need characters that'll just kind of stand there and look around and just stand there for a minute. And as a stunt performer, you're, for example, if they say be a tough guy, you're going to be a gangster. So your idle stance might be like,
right.
Okay, so if you play that on a loop, and you've got a crowd of 500 people doing that, it's going to look awful. It's gonna look awful. Like a crowd of 500 tough guys looks like this.
You're right.
Stand there. They just stand there and like kind of keep still. And maybe every now and then wrap your nose, look around a little bit, everything's cool, and go back, right? And so that's movement language, because you're not what you have to understand is that and that's not violence, right? You standing there is not violence, but it is movement language.
Yeah.
That even the way that a person stands and holds their arms, it speaks volumes. Again, like you said, it talks about their PTSD. I mean, if somebody is constantly standing like this,
yeah,
that says something, man.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
If somebody's constantly standing like this, that says something.
Yeah.
You know? And so I'm always thinking about that. Okay, so how do we sell the shape of that? The shape is kind of at the center of that, right? Okay, so if we need to play a tough guy, okay, maybe this tough guy is he's just a wall, right? So maybe his main move is just sort of being an obstruction.
Right.
Right. Maybe that's what it is. And the rest of it might be very nonchalant. Maybe it's like, yeah, come on over. And then you obstruct, and then you go back to, yeah, maybe that's your move, right?
Yeah.
And so just the way that I like open up doors, right? It kind of says something. And I've always wondered this, like am I sending the wrong message? like if I enter a room, you can tell a lot about somebody the way they walk into a bar.
Yeah.
You can tell if they're from that neighborhood.
Yeah.
Everybody knows this, it's hard to put your finger on it. And so I think about that a lot now. I think that there's some intuition there that we can rely on, where, okay, this person opened the door and it doesn't look right. Like they don't look right. And let's not run from that intuition.
Yeah.
Let's actually break it down, and maybe you can apply movement language to that. And so I guess I use it for myself a bit, but it's much more about how I perceive the world now, and the way that I look at. I have kids, and I kind of just watch how they enter a room.
Yeah.
I look at how somebody walks down the street. I look at where kids' eyes go when they're walking.
Okay.
I mean, it just says so much. You don't have to say a single thing, but it speaks volumes, And I think just like violence, I think just in general, all human movement is just like laden with meaning.
Yeah.
And there's a whole world to kind of discover there. And so what's funny though is that, so here's where I think this is my proof that we're not in a simulation right now. Because there's always a simulation hypothesis, right? Because AI is so good.
Mm-hmm.
No offense, but I think AI could possibly generate you, and 100%. It could probably generate me.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with you. But if you were to punch somebody, I don't think it could render that.
Yeah. Too many nuances to all what's involved.
How is that possible?
Yeah.
Think about this. It could render you doing a speech hours long.
Yeah.
And you can make very perfectly coherent points, and you can do it from one prompt. Okay. Try and do that with a single prompt with punching a guy out.
Yeah.
The quote unquote basest human behavior is not renderable.
That's so interesting, because even if you put man punches other man unconscious, there's so much packed into that.
You can imagine what it's going to look like. It's going to look awful. You can make jokes about this.
Yeah.
I just for a laugh, I decided, I'd ask Gemini does video now, and I was like, render a tough guy farting and laughing about it. And it couldn't do it. Right?
Yeah.
Oh, isn't this a base behavior though? Isn't this very simple? Well, it turns out that it's like the most complicated thing in the world. How is this possible?
Yeah, there's so much potential. Again, this sounds wrong what I'm about to say, but there's so much potential to violence and movement in general that I guess it's impossible to calculate. I was thinking a second ago, actually, that when you were take God of War, for example, you had your, let's call it, standard movements, standard fighting actions. But I was just wondering, did you also have to take standard actions and then tailor them to like a stealth mode or a berserker mode, like a rage mode? So you had to have various states attached to said violence, which makes it even more complex.
Yeah. Every game's got things like that, and
right.
You have these specific metrics too, especially with games. Unlike movies, when you're doing gameplay motion capture, the player is going to see that move 10,000 times. If you're the protagonist, even if you're a boss, you're going to see it, dozens of times. But in a fight scene in a movie, if you can kind of phone it in, and people might miss it and they'll never see it again. Unless they watch the clip on repeat. But in a game, if you're the protagonist, they're going to see that move thousands of times.
Mm-hmm.
So they're very they're extremely particular about the distance you need to go, the amount of time you have to get there, the amount you have to move toward the camera a certain amount, and this way a certain amount, all these things. And I think that it's kind of difficult to do that,
right?
If you're not breaking the movement down. And one thing, and I know I'm not quite answering your question.
No, please.
But what I'm getting at is that not only do you have like these paint layers for like this attack in this game, the game has its own movement style, the character has its own movement style, and you've got these different modes of the character, but also like you might have nuances in your movement that they don't want. So as a martial artist, okay, so you've got your mocap resume and you've got your agent, they submit you for a God of War or whatever, and they look at you, let's not God of War, some other game, let's say we're looking for a 6'2", this guy's 6'2", great, okay, fits all these things, come on in, you've got mocap experience, you need to move like an astronaut or something, right? And you need to punch like an astronaut, and maybe you've trained in wushu, and maybe when you punch, you tend to look at your fist before you punch.
Okay.
You might have a quirk like that. And I noticed this with wushu performers where like they wind up, they look, and then and it's very, very gymnastics like, right? And I'm always correcting people in wushu, going like, okay, when you attack, you got to look at the target. And they'll go, oh yeah, sorry, and they'll go, ha, and they'll still do it. It's like they haven't separated the head from the movement.
Right.
And then when they finally are able to kind of lock on and go Terminator and throw a punch, then they've sort of learned real kung fu.
Okay.
My view, that to me is that's my kung fu, is de-articulating everything, which is kind of the original Beijing opera style, where you can de-articulate your whole body. That's what Eisenstein said about it. It was like skeletons dancing, he said. And if you can do that, then like those layers that you're talking about becomes much easier. But the reason I have movement language is like that's my rubric that I kind of throw all those things into. It's my sentence structure.
Yeah. It was, honestly, it was so fascinating. I really enjoyed reading that, and just the learning that you had to go through in order to adapt to these games and kind of step up and do the job, essentially, right? I think that's I don't know, it was so interesting to me. I have to bring up Roba.
Yes, please.
So for those that don't know who are watching this, Roba is reciprocal object-based aggression, which Eric explained earlier. Which is basically the potential, and I'm probably simplifying things, I'm so sorry, but the potential for someone to use objects in combat, essentially, in violence. And I don't know if I'm even asking the right question here, does Roba translate to video games? Meaning, do you want the player to feel as though there is the potential for Roba to take place?
Completely. Yeah.
Wow, yeah.
That's absolutely what I'm going for whenever I'm performing. I mean, you especially get to feel that way. I mean, it's kind of like, because we do, I'll do a protagonist and I'll
Yeah.
do an NPC and a boss too.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of the time, the game designers have sort of designed a movement set to capitalize on that very thing,
Yeah.
where you're trying to set the player up for a pattern and you break that pattern. And like in Demon Souls, for example, that's a hard game. I don't know if anybody's
Yes.
played it.
So I hear.
It's a hard game. And there is a there's something you could do that's very mean. And I don't think we did this. But like if as a boss character, right? And I know that we're not quite talking about just the potential for objects, but I'm just going to use this as an example of if I wind up like this, right? You're kind of expecting something to come down. And if I wind up like this, you're kind of expecting something to go up.
Absolutely.
Right. And you could probably mess with players by doing that same antic into the overhead, right? You could do that, and then you're just going to have this unblockable enemy. You won't really know if he's. And I've heard complaints about, games that do that. They sort of just like mix up the anticipation poses, and like you don't actually know what's coming.
Yeah.
Right. But I think with the protagonist though, what you really want the player, so there's this term called affordance. Which I had a mug on me. I don't have one. Here's a good example. So if I hold up a screwdriver, it's not really a screwdriver, but it's good enough. If I hold up a screwdriver, like if you said, Eric, can you pass me that screwdriver? And I said, here you go. Yeah. Okay, so you're going to grab this in a certain way. It's going to be like this, right? Yes. You're going to kind of do one of these. If I say, here you go, then you're going to grab it like this, right? And if I hand it to you like this, you're going to go like this. You're going to grab it like that. The thing that you might not know right now is that, well, if we were in person, it would be a better effect. But if I held this up to you like this, it would actually create an anticipation scheme in your mind. You're actually building a simulation for how one would grab it like this, right? Yeah. And it's basically a map of neurons that sort of conforms to this grip, right? And the same thing would be true if I handed you, a cup. Right. This is not sponsored by this company. If I held up this cup, your sort of internal motor representation, as Rizzolatti calls it, looks like this, and that's in your mind, right? Yes. And that's what this thing's doing to you. It's not what I'm doing to you. The way that I hand it to you might actually affect it, right? But there's all these things that sort of inundate us when they come into our sensory perception. Yes. That then form this system of anticipations in our mind, and it's like a verbal language. It's like a motor language that forms with like various hand gestures, or maybe it's your teeth. I don't know, whatever it is. So that's called affordance. So an object's affordance, this can's affordance is this, or if I told you to clean it up, it might be this. Yes. Okay. Right? You know exactly what I'm talking about because your brain's kind of doing it as you're simulating what's happening. Yeah. And I can kind of like inundate you with stuff, I can hold up all these different things and your brain might be like, well, it's kind of like switching between poses and figuring it. It's kind of like shuffling through them, right? Right. Okay. So the same thing applies when you're a protagonist, when you're playing a protagonist in a game doing motion capture. If there is an axe, for example, there's sort of an anticipation for the player of like how that axe should come out and how it should be held. The player's actually like, if you have the axe on your back in God of War, I think one of the reasons it feels so good is because Kratos holds that axe in like the ideal way. The animators figured that out. Right. And the average player is like, oh yeah, that would work. That's how I'm going to throw that thing. Right. Right. If Kratos held the axe like this, it'd be a Paul Bunyan game instead, it'd be a different kind of experience. Right. And so it's the same kind of thing, like when we're figuring out how to draw a weapon, when we're swinging a weapon, and when we're throwing a weapon, when we're catching it, walking a weapon, all of that, we're sort of not just thinking about like, what's typical or what makes the most sense. It's like, well, how does the player, what is the affordance of this object? What is the affordance of this situation? What would feel the best?
Right.
And there's a ton of psychology that goes into that. And this is all stuff I've learned from game animators. And, I'm just putting it into this like new terminology.
Right. Yeah, I've always, I haven't always actually, but it's kind of like, if you see, I don't know, if you're playing a video game, for example, and you see, let's say a sword lying on the ground, you've kind of got to go in your head the potential for either I can pick that up or possibly an enemy can pick that up, right? Yeah. And I think I like that's factored into a lot of games where it can go either way, and it leaves there isn't an inevitable conclusion of what's about to happen, right? It could be, and I just like the idea of that in video. Just basically, I'm trying to say video games that keep you guessing.
Yeah.
And I think especially in the realms of violence, that when there's a potential for anything, if we're talking about Robo, for example, there's a potential for escalation of violence.
Yeah.
And I must say, I thought I caught you out. I will admit, I was reading your book, and just the other night, my wife and I sat down to watch a nature documentary, and I think it's called Dynasties, if I remember correctly. And there's an episode on a clan, essentially, of chimpanzees, and they had a fight, a whole bunch of them, and they started picking up these large logs and they started swinging them around. And I said, "Uh-oh, I'm going to bring this up to Eric because he's wrong." And I read your book, and you mentioned that they just use it for display, for intimidation. That's exactly what these chimpanzees did.
Yeah,
and I went, "Oh shit, I haven't got him. I haven't caught him out."
Look, the reason I researched this was because I thought chimpanzees did this stuff.
Yes,
I was convinced of it.
Yeah.
And one of the things that convinced me was there was this 5-year-long, they call it a war, the Gombe Chimpanzee War,
That's
1970
crazy.
to 74. When there was I was in Tanzania, I believe, and one group, the Kasekela, and started attacking the Kahama, and they wiped out the Kahama tribe. And there was the way that the violence, it's not violence, the way that the combat worked was that the Kasekala chimps would all gang up on on like a single Kahama chimp, basically beat the chimp to death and leave him for dead. And he might, crawl off for a day or two, but he'd probably die of organ failure or something, or thirst, who knows. So one of the misconceptions of the Gombe Chimpanzee War, first of all, that it was some kind of mass slaughter, when in fact it's like there were 10 casualties. The second thing is that even when you asked, everybody should do this, by the way, to see if ChatGPT or Gemini or Grok, see if they've learned yet. Ask them if they used weapons in the Gombe Chimpanzee War. Ask them.
And they'll say yes, right?
They will say yes. Like every time I've asked, it says yes.
Yeah.
And I did a debate against Gemini, and I debated Gemini, and I was like, give me a source. And it can't really do source. It couldn't do sources back then. But I just asked it, like, what weapons did it use? Oh, they use branches. And I asked, kind of like what you said, I was like, were they actually attacking with the branches? They said, actually, no. This is Gemini. Gemini's going like, oh, actually, no. Yeah, probably not. Eventually, they got to admit that it was wrong.
Wow.
But there's this Mandela effect where everybody thinks that chimpanzees were using weapons.
Yeah.
And this has sort of been fueled by Planet of the Apes and these movies that showed chimpanzees moving to using weapons without really even talking about it as a big deal. Like, oh yeah, naturally, that's because they do that.
Yeah.
But they don't.
No.
They don't do it. And it's actually, there's one anecdote, and it seems like a flawed one, of like one chimp throwing a rock at another chimp's head. And I don't even think it was a killing blow. But it's sort of been like mythologized as this proof that, like, aha, see, chimps do that same thing, so we just kind of do an extension of what they do, and that doesn't seem to be the case.
That's it. Technically, then, is there essentially? Are we safe to say that within the animal kingdom there are no loose weapons? Obviously, they have their claws, teeth, antlers, whatever it may be. In theory, is there no concept of loose weapons in the animal kingdom?
Not loose. The only, what's funny is, like, was thinking about it. I was watching like a crab documentary, and like hermit crabs, they have shields. Think about it. They have a shield and a claw now it's now hold on, the claw. No, the claw is built on, but the house, like their shield is something they move into.
That's true. Yeah.
Right. And so they do have that. It's interesting that like the animal that's got the closest connection to our combat is a hermit crab. What does that say? But even then, hermit crabs are, they're really dumb. Like if a hermit crab has a really strong shell, it'll assume that its opponent has a strong shell too. It won't actually mutually anticipate.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so even if it has no shell, it'll just bash on it. It's like, hey, hold on. You just one look, you see the guy's not cut out for this, right? But mammals will mutually anticipate. So, a deer will kind of survey the antlers of its opponent, it seems, and kind of like know which move to do in response to that.
Yeah.
But even then, loose weapons, no.
So, in theory, can a bout of, let's say, chimpanzee violence, can it only escalate to a certain point until it can escalate no more? Meaning they only have their hands, their teeth, their claws, or not claws, but the chimpanzees, but, hands, teeth, and then that limits them. So there is a point, like with weapons, you bring a knife, I bring a gun, you bring a gun, I bring a rocket launcher. It can just
you don't know. You have no idea.
Exactly. It's entirely random. You can bring a gun, I can bring a needle, a syringe. You don't know what the hell, filled with poison. Who knows? Yeah. But in the chimpanzee world, there's a point where they can hit each other and bite each other, but nothing kind of beyond that. They're not going to I guess, I was just about to say they're not going to push each other off a cliff, but in theory, that's not object-based violence. That's environmental.
It would be object-based violence, but they don't do it. They don't do it. It's just, I have proof. There's this fight. You just look it up. There's a fight on a cliff. These chimps are like, there's two chimps on one.
Really?
So one chimp's back is to the camera. Right behind him is like a 40-foot drop. And he's just kind of standing there. He's doing this Jackie Chan move, by the way, where and there are two here. There are two chimps right here.
Yeah.
And they're kind of like, whacking him this, and he's doing this, and then he'll come back and he'll fight back, and they do it again. And he's about to fall, and and it's like, dude, get away from the ledge. Not only that, why aren't they pushing him?
Yes.
Right. And so you could make the same case, like an eagle. An eagle will take, a baby lamb and dump it off a cliff.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah, good point.
Go down there and get it. But I've not seen any concerted effort by any animal to push another animal into oncoming traffic.
Right.
I don't see an effort. I see like obliviousness.
Yeah.
They'll both go into traffic, or they'll both go off a cliff. I don't know what that is, man. Like it's almost like animal combat just shuts off all other options. And you could call that tunnel vision.
Right.
And there's a case that human combat is that too, except we're kind of in the combat loop constantly, because especially if you're, if you live in a dangerous environment, you're just always in combat technically.
Yeah, I see what you mean by that.
You know
yes.
Like anything could happen. Anybody could come and rob this house, right? Like
you're always in combat mode, I suppose you would say. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm not certain that animals feel that way. It seems as though animals go into a mode.
Yeah.
And all other options are off, and then they go out of the mode. But when humans go into the mode, you might not think of using an object, and I've seen that, but if you've trained it, you can, and you will, and you'll grab people's shirts and you'll throw them off a cliff, you throw them into traffic. Even people who aren't thinking very straight will grab their knife and start going. And so it's just different. I don't know how else to explain it.
So is Roba a potential concept in everyone? Do you believe that everyone has the potential for, let's say, object-based violence?
Yeah.
I guess, yeah. It's not about It's not about whether you want to. It's about, do you have the possibility? Is it there? Are you capable of it? Yes. If you have a rock or a stick or whatever nearby, or whatever it may be, like you said, using a cliff or drowning someone or whatever it may be, I guess there's always the human potential to do that because we are aware of it. It is a possibility. Animals are not.
Yeah, we're aware that we can do it, which means that we're aware that they can do it
Someone
as well.
else can do it. Yeah.
And so with primates, for example, even though it is possible that a primate might swing a stick or throw a rock, and that might be a killing blow, I don't think that primates can anticipate that coming.
Yeah. Yeah.
Otherwise, they would bring a rock and do it back.
Yeah.
Right. So if they could anticipate it, they would preempt it.
Yeah.
Possibly escalate it. And like you said, there's a limit to their escalation. It's this like, it's like there's this natural sort of like governor braking effect on their combat.
It's like, it's human violence, or let's say object-based violence, for example, it's like the ultimate game of rock, paper, scissors, where someone plays rock, but someone then just goes, I play diamond. And it's like an infinite, they keep piling, well, you play diamond, I play whatever it may be, and it just keeps going until they're saying, oh, I raise you solar energy. Oh, no, raise you, sorry, I'm talking poker, but it's just so over. That's really interesting. The potential there for infinite violence.
When you ask, is this in all people? I say that because I believe that there's a kind of, think of it like your plumbing. There's there's a system of plumbing that allows this to happen.
Yeah.
People have called it recursion before in language.
Yeah.
In that you sort of have this self-nesting capacity for symbolism in language. Well, you also have self-nesting capacity with Roba, where I'm anticipating that you're going to bring something, but I'm also anticipating that you're anticipating that I'm going to bring something. So I'm going to disguise this, but I know that you know that I'm going to disguise that. So I'm anticipating you anticipating back and forth forever until it just becomes gray matter. And I just can't, like, my, orders of intentionality just cap off.
Right.
So whatever that plumbing is, seems to be, to me, I think it's the same plumbing as language. Because it's the same sort of recursive tactics where it's like, okay, you're talking about Kung Fu cinema. Well, when you say Kung Fu cinema, you kind of mean the 80s Kung Fu cinema. You don't mean like, 1960s Kung Fu cinema. I know you don't mean Kwantak Hing 1950s Kung Fu cinema. I know what you're talking about, but you didn't say that. I'm just kind of accessing this thing that's in between us.
Right.
And like, okay, there's a symbol there. I think I share the same value of it. I'm going to check that. And I'm seeing if he's thinking about the same. It's actually the same thing.
Yeah.
All I'm doing is, like, instead of turning on the hot water, I'm turning on the cold water and the plumbing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, actually, because with language, there is a mutual exchange, obviously, because it's communication, but there is a potential for anything in language. If you think about it, you don't know, you can be, I don't know if I'm kind of simplifying it here, but like the potential for a conversation to, let's say, deviate or change dramatically into something else, that's exactly the same as violence.
Except within language, it's safe to escalate it.
Of course.
Right?
Yes.
Or any cultural form, whether it's art, music, religion. These things are these modes that we can enter into. Even if we build sort of a boundary of rules that say no hitting below the waist, no weapons, right? And then we can fight within that.
Right.
Even there, we can sort of rely on that plumbing system that's like a language like force field that kind of keeps this thing from escalating, because as soon as it escalates to a certain amount, we shut it down, because you can't escalate combat because it goes to the apocalypse.
Yes.
As we learned in the Cold War,
Yeah, and I suppose an escalation of language can turn into violence.
It can. I mean, that's why we have fighting words laws, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah. So I guess this is quite a serious question, I'm asking, but do you think we can resolve language before we understand language? Sorry, do you think we can resolve violence before we understand violence? Or do you think we have to understand violence to be able to, quote unquote, resolve it? Like, obviously we live in very violent times, and the object, I guess, for all the world powers or whatever it may be is to de-escalate the violence in countries, whatever it may be. Do you think we have to understand it first, or can we resolve it, then look back and go, okay, this is what violence was, or this is why it was like this?
Well, I think there's an inverse relationship there. I think that the higher up you are in the caste order, the less you have to understand violence, because it's just not really an issue for you a lot of the time.
Right.
But people down at the street level who have to deal with this stuff on a daily basis, they understand it. They know what they're looking at. In fact, you could probably ask the average person on on the street, like, "Hey, does that guy have a knife?" He could tell you by looking at him.
Right. Yeah.
Because they have this sort of like built-in vocabulary, you could say. They're fluent. I call it biolinguistics in the book. I have two hypothetical countries. There's what do I call them? I call them like V land and L land, right?
Yes.
V land is where, vengeance is everything. You can't really depend on the police. Bureaucrats are corrupt. And you're not really going to play chess. You're going to try and rig the game, and like it's really just like all about you and your family. It's kind of a zombie apocalypse world, right? And then there's L land, which is like what Starship Enterprise, basically, where it's everything is discussed in terms of like very, very objective terms. Your bureaucracy has no corruption. You defer everything to the police. There's no vengeance. Enforcement and punishment work. Right. And in L land, if you're in that bubble, well, I think there's a tendency for people there to kind of think that they're beyond violence, like they have understood it.
Yes.
I think it's the opposite. I think that they've built this structure that's so strong around them that they've just sort of like firewalled it.
They don't have to understand it.
They don't have to understand it. And in fact, when they're faced with it, they break down pretty bad.
Right.
They break down. I mean, this is the whole Karen thing, right? Like this is the inner city sort of suburbanite meeting the urbanite. And what happens is like, you just don't have the vocabulary anymore. So you start shouting, and the other dude's like, "Hey, dude, lady, get off of me." And she's just kind of saying it. At some point he pops her, and then there's, all hell breaks loose. But
yeah, I didn't even think about that. I guess in many instances, we don't understand violence, we just act upon it. And when we don't understand it, we can act upon it strangely, or what could be considered strangely, because the language we're speaking isn't the language of violence, so it doesn't work. So if you are a Karen, for example, and you're saying all these terrible things and saying, "Oh, this is my lake, you can't fish here," even though quite obviously it is not their lake and you can fish there. It's you're not speaking the language of the other person, I suppose.
You're speaking a different language.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So it all, as it unfolds in the book, as you were telling me.
Karen punch.
Yeah. Karen punch. You have to learn that language next, the Karen punch.
Karen punch, yeah. And if you want to move into a gated community, you probably should learn Karen punch.
That's great. That's fantastic. Yeah, I need to see a clip of you throwing that. Bouncing back, I have to bring up a certain subject, because I think everyone in the martial arts cinema community would kill me if I didn't. There have been rumblings online of a Contour 2. Can you say anything about it? Or
yeah. That was that was a big dream before Dennis died,
Okay. Yeah. I'm sorry to
No. It's important to talk about it, because that was going to be our thing.
Yeah. Okay.
And for those who don't know, Dennis was like a very close friend and a an early believer in the Stunt People mission. He had been doing movies actually before I had.
Wow.
And when we met in 03, he came to our stunt practice, and literally when he walked in the door, we were shooting a test fight already. And we had talked about this. I said, hey, when you show up, and the phones were these back then. They had like a receiver and I had one of these. When you get here, we're going to be doing a short fight. Do you want to work with us? He's like, oh yeah, cool. I'll be right there. So he walked in the door, and I said, oh, hold on. Hi, nice to meet you, but go back out and then come back in when I say action. And I started. So from the moment I met Dennis, he was on camera.
Wow.
And so our relationship was completely kind of tied up in that mutual vision that we had.
Yeah.
And I cherish those moments, and Contour was like, is it like the apex of Contour is that final fight. And there's a lot of great fights in it. And
oh yeah.
And then everybody just remembers Dennis's kicks in that movie. And I knew, like, one of the things I always said was like, Dennis is a Swiss watch. You wind him up and you kind of build a thing around him and you just let him go and you react. And that was my shtick with him.
Right.
That was my shtick. And I had Contour 2 was going to be a buddy cop kind of, or a buddy criminal kind of heist movie with him, and I wanted to do a Rope-a-Dope 3, but he died about a month and a half ago, and so I don't quite know what I'm gonna do with that.
Understandable.
I just have to let it sit for a little bit.
Of course.
I'm actually glad you brought it up because I did want to talk about him.
Yeah, I think for anyone that doesn't know, Dennis was also responsible for directing the fantastic Unlucky Stars. If you're not aware of that film, really do track it down. It's basically a who's who of kind of independent martial arts filmmaking, and it's an absolute delight. Much like Contour, I almost see it as like the spiritual brother of Contour, because it just is a massive labor of love of people doing what they love. And once again, we were talking about Korean super kickers, and if you want to talk about American-based super kickers, then Dennis was one of the best. Yeah, his legs, wow, just unbelievable, unbelievable. Very, very sad. I'm sorry that it's just resulted in obviously projects being held, but I understand, and everyone does, of course. But fantastic talent, and he
was also he was like a lot of things to us, but like one of the things they say is he's kind of like a Huang Zhang Li in that you could have him do the same kick and you do it exactly the same every take.
Yeah.
People don't know how hard that is. like when people watch me, like, hey, you're a great kicker, and I'm like, you're seeing the best take. I'm lucky I got it up there.
Yeah.
Right. That was the best take of 10. My other 9 kind of octopus kicks.
Yeah.
Every one of the 10 takes, Dennis that kick would have hit the same spot.
Right.
Every time.
Wow.
And people just don't know that, man. Like
a true talent. A true talent.
Yeah. So to be able to, and I always aspired to that. I never had it. Like I'm still kind of all over the place, and that's my style now. But to be able to do what he did is like really hard, super hard.
Yeah, a special talent, it seems. Absolutely. Do you have any personal like martial arts cinema projects on the horizon at all? Like, are you planning on any short films or anything like that at the moment?
I'm always working on something.
Okay.
And the days of pumping out short films every 2 weeks or so are kind of over. It's pretty hard for multiple reasons, right? I mean, life takes over, and I'm always working on games, so those will come out.
Yeah, of course.
And but the other thing too is, I don't know, call it vanity, but I'm a little bit selective about the movies I do, because I don't just want to go and do a short film anymore. I think that by the way, let me just say this for anybody starting: don't let that stop you. Like, go out and just try stuff. Like, figure out your thing.
Right.
It took me 15 years to get to rope-a-dope. You know, it's not gonna, it doesn't happen overnight. You gotta just try stuff, and everybody's gonna be different. Everybody's gonna move differently on camera. Try stuff out, mess up, fail constantly. You're gonna fail 90% of the time. Don't be afraid of that. And then at a certain point, you might kind of find your rhythm, and then you might kind of pull it back a little bit. You're like, okay, I'm not gonna just keep making stuff all the time. That's my excuse for being lazy and not doing any short.
You got a lot on your plate. You're juggling a lot of different things. So I think it's understandable. I think most people realize, like, the glory days, I will say, of like a small YouTube short film, martial arts short film getting released every 2 weeks are kind of done. There's people still doing it, and there's still people pulling them out, and they're still, you know, as good as they always were. But to this day, I think still the stunt people are. I mean, they will always be known, or you will always be known, I guess. I'm saying you will always be known as something truly special in the community.
Oh,
a lot of people, I guess, I hate to say it, kind of, it makes you sound like 100 years old, but many people grew up with the stunt people. You know, I'm unfortunate. I came late to stunt people. I was not aware of the forums when I was growing up. The first short I saw by you was, is it Hand Over Fist?
Yeah.
The Wheels on Meals style fight.
Yeah.
That's the first one I saw. I remember.
Cool.
Yeah, I remember specifically. I saw that one. I can't remember what site I saw it on, but I was just like, okay, I found something special here, and that's when I jumped into the Stunt People YouTube channel and started watching.
Oh, that's interesting. That was your entry. Yeah, that was with Hiroshi. Hiroshi was just this really sweet Japanese exchange student.
Yeah,
and had this very unique style of fighting that I think he could kill a man.
Oh, wow.
With his hands. Like, I think he could do it if anybody. And so I'm known to be able to take some damage. That dude, you'll notice I did 2 fights with Hiroshi on the channel. Both of them I play the gag of I do the Jackie Chan thing because I had to.
You meant it.
Yeah, he was amazing, man.
Wow, that's all. And you have, obviously you have a YouTube channel. Do you have the entire Stunt People back catalog on your channel? Roughly, I should say. I'm sure there's much more that you did, but do you have like the core videos on your channel?
I think there's some skeletons from 2001 to 2002 that are not on there,
right?
Which I'll put them up there, you know, whatever. But no, almost everything is on there. There's some things,
I scroll through them.
Like, wow. There's some things that other people are claiming ownership over, like Death Grip. You can't see the knife fight still.
Really?
But for the most part, yeah, it's all on there. Yeah.
They're blocking that and just copyright.
Yeah, because some American distributor has it, and I just don't even want to deal with it.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, I think I've seen a few instances of that. So yeah,
I get $100 check every year, and
Christmas comes early.
Yeah, hey, groceries.
Yeah, but I believe Contour's up in entirety.
Yeah, in 4K up-res. Looks nice.
Everyone has to go and watch Contour. If what year was Contour?
We shot it in 05. We released it in 06.
So 06, and I will tell everyone now, guarantee if you watch Contour for the first time now, you will see at least one fight scene that becomes your new favorite fight scene.
You'll be offended at least once also. I promise you'll be offended at least once.
It's one hell of a fun film, though. It's really, really. I have it on Blu-ray, I think, or DVD somewhere.
You have to understand, like, I went through film school. I talk about film school in the book. I got out of film school. I had the worst time, and that was my like big middle finger to film school. That movie.
Really? So interesting. Yeah. So much talent in that as well. Just great stuff. Always nice to see Vlad Rimberg in there. I'm sure a lot of people know Vlad. He's quite different in this film, I will say.
Yeah, so he's in drag, and I had a call with him recently. And I was like, Vlad, hey man, I never apologized for putting you in drag in that movie. I don't know what came over me. That I probably shouldn't have done that. And he's like, Oh no, that was my idea.
There you go. You're off the hook. I'm sure Vlad has put his team through worse. I believe he likes to push his team quite a bit, and there's some. I mean, if anyone doesn't know Vlad Rimberg, just look him up because his channel, like once again, is fantastic. Some great short films on there, and of course, he's doing big things elsewhere now at the moment. So, yeah, there's talent out there. Sometimes you've just got to search for it, and I always feel sad. I shouldn't say sad. I always feel like a little bit sorry for people that are big fans of the martial arts cinema and just haven't dabbled in the YouTube side of things and the stuff they're missing out on. It's like, oh God, there's so much good stuff out there.
It's kind of fun to look back at the stuff, the early stuff that Vlad did, and Manny Manzanares, and all these other people from the forum that like work on the biggest Hollywood movies now too. Sam Hargrave, he wasn't on the forum so much, but he also had an indie action team called Real Kick.
Oh my God, I think I know them.
Lateef Crowder, he was with Zero Gravity. I mean, there's some gold when you look at the first movies these guys did back in 02, 03.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you have to take a walk down memory lane sometimes and just see how good it was.
Yeah.
It really, to me now, when I look at like that 03 to 07 era of indie action, I think like that to modern, I won't say John Wick, but like a lot of modern action it's just become very blocky and very John Wick's got amazing gags, but the very kind of blocky kind of action, you compare that to the 03 to 08 era, it's kind of like comparing the late 90s Hong Kong cinema to early 80s.
Yes.
When you look back to the early 80s and you go, whoa, wait a minute, what happened?
Yeah. There was a slight, not a decline, just a switch up. It feels just a different pacing and a different, I hate using this word, but a different vibe to the fights. It was just, it's something different. And I always implore people to really research action directors and fight choreographers and just see what they've done. And go onto their YouTube channels and watch their stuff, because I guarantee you'll find something incredible on there. And it's just people have to look. Have you met many Hong Kong legends in the past?
Not really. I mean,
no.
I did a podcast for a year called Action Talks.
Yes.
And I have a few episodes in the bank I haven't released. Sorry, I haven't had time. One of them is with Mars. I have one with Kurata.
Oh my God.
Yeah, Kurata-san. Those, and then Michael Jai White, and there are a couple others too.
Wow.
I just haven't released them yet, but I went to Hong Kong. I did one movie in Hong Kong. Mm-hmm. Do not look it up. It's not good. It's not what you think. And I met Carter Wong. I met John Chang.
Okay.
But I don't know, man. My world just never quite met that world. I don't know what it is. And I'll be honest with you. I worked in Hong Kong for a month. I saw how it operates. I don't think I can make a movie like that.
Really?
Because I don't know how it was in the 80s. But the way it was when I was there, this is like 2012, 2014 or so. It's just a different, I don't know, man. How do I explain it? Like, you don't have as much time anymore, obviously, but also it's just a totally different world. Like, they think differently about payment and cash and honor and all this stuff, and it's just different, man. I think that if I'd had a crew that I came up with, that would be different, right? Like if I were in Hong Kong for 10 years and I had a crew, that would be different. That would be a different thing.
Yes.
But no, like there were a few times where I almost worked on a Jackie Chan movie. I almost worked with Daniel Wu. It's like these things almost happen, and it's like they didn't. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to push that. I don't know what that means, you know?
Yeah.
That's a sign. If it's just like if I just don't fit,
right?
And I'm fine with that. I'm pretty happy with where I ended up.
That's fair. I think you've met your fair share of good people within the genre, certainly. And I think you will always go down as an absolute legend in the community and in the genre, and you know, I don't
right.
mean to embarrass you or anything, but I think you, if you're not aware of it, I hope you are secretly aware of it, that you know there are people who would live by the Stunt People videos, you know, that came out, and just be on tenterhooks waiting for a new one to drop. And I think that's very, very exciting. And you know, you're at least partial cause of all that. So yeah, good times, good times. I look back on those very fondly. After I discovered the online community and just started watching all these videos, yeah, it's a big part of who I am as far as cinema goes,
Yeah, me too.
an appreciation of fight scenes, action, comedy. Comedy. What people forget. Take Ropedo, for example. I mean, just pitch perfect comedy in that, and it's just people forget. Would you say your comedy came from Jackie Chan, or was it more Charlie Chaplin, going back to your kind of younger years, or both?
A lot of Peter Sellers too. A lot of Peter Sellers.
Yeah, of course, of course.
Just I don't know. The Pink Panther just made sense to me.
Yeah.
Mr. Bean. There's a lot of.
I had like Bean.
Yeah, of
wow,
course.
That's a reference I didn't think you'd come out with.
Of course. Well, it's just the way he could still tell a story with his body. You know?
100%. He's great.
Jacques Tati is another one. Even just like the way that like Jacques Tati is kind of like a slightly more cognizant Mr. Magoo, right?
Right.
And like that kind of, you know, physical storytelling, it requires you kind of like know what your body looks like at any given point, which probably means that if those guys are anything like me, they're probably very in their bodies. I don't know how to describe it, but that's how I've always felt. Like I feel pain very easily. I'm in my body so much that I kind of just know what shape it's in, and I don't know what it is. But I can stand there then and do something goofy and people laugh, apparently.
You say you feel pain quite strongly, but you're famous for taking some serious falls.
Yeah, but like the goal is like to not feel any pain.
Oh, I guess
like,
you're right.
That's all technique.
Yeah.
And like I mean, I've seen dudes do wrecks, like Hargrave would do these wrecks. Oh my gosh, man, like he would hit so hard, and I know that he could do it multiple times.
Yeah.
And there were other dudes too who could just like do the side fall without a hip pad or anything. They could just do it over and over. I do one and I'm like, okay, I don't know if I can do that again. Like that's bad. And I don't know if it's actually any worse than their situation. Like maybe they're just like, well, of course I'm bruised, but get over it. You know, like some guys are just like that. I'm not.
You're not built like that.
Apparently not. I don't know. Maybe I'm not into it enough. I don't know. But anyway, my goal is to like, okay, how do I fall without getting hurt? And it's all just physics at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I bet. I mean, I think take someone like me who watches those falls, and to this day, I can't comprehend them. I'm just
try
like,
and
well,
do one take. I try and do one take.
I was going to say my body would just break; it just fall apart.
One take, please.
Do you have to do falls for video games then?
Yeah, all the time.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
I guess there's like death scenes and things like that, or
knockdowns. Those are the best. Those are the
Oh.
best. Yeah, like you have reactions, knockdowns, and deaths. Deaths are great because it's a character moment. You know, you get to like I don't know. Like I always I probably freak out directors sometimes where they'll say, "Okay, we're moving on to deaths," and I go, "Okay, cool. So how long do I have to die?" And I go, 5 seconds or so. Okay, so did this guy have plans later? Like I get really kind of into the psychology. Yeah. You know, because even death, even the movement of death has meaning to it.
Oh, of course.
You know, I don't want to do the on and off thing. It's like, can I have his guts come out?
Yeah.
Do that, and they're kind of like, well, we'll call animation and see. We can shoot one just in case. Can't promise you. So yeah, I do. And there's a fall there, obviously. But.
Yeah. I guess it's to tie it back to Kung Fu cinema for a second. I guess it's like the famous Kung Fu villain death. You want to know whether you can be like,
yeah.
Spit out some blood and then take a good like 5 seconds or 10 seconds to die.
Yeah. You gotta have that.
Yeah, that's great.
But the nice thing about mocap is, you know, we use we use an inertial motion capture system called STUNTMAN'S. So I get to put pads on top of the system because it's not optical, and I get to fall on crash mats. It's actually pretty laid back.
That's nice. A lot easier than what you used to do, huh?
No falling on concrete in this. But I will say that there's something like when you fall on concrete, your body will anticipate that. And it reacts differently. And like there's a way that you fall on concrete where you can make it not hurt. And there are ways where if you're falling on a pad, that can really hurt you.
Right.
And especially like if you misjudge how soft that pad is, and if you fall on your butt, sometimes falling on your butt on a pad is worse because your head whiplash is worse than you do on concrete.
Yeah.
Because it bounces.
Yeah.
So
how did you learn to fall, or was that just trial and error?
Trial and error.
Wow.
I took gymnastics when I was in middle school. I wasn't very good at it.
No.
So I quit and decided to do stunts. And
good idea.
Yeah. But the first fall I did was the Hong Kong spin.
Oh, wow.
I have a video sitting around somewhere back in like 2000 where I was like, hey, throw a crescent kick. And I'll go like this. And I just jumped and went for it and I got it.
Wow.
And I did a second one, a third one, and the fourth one I landed right on my elbow on my side. It's like, all right, God, that's 4 takes. We got enough.
4 takes, pick the best one.
Yeah. And so yeah, it was just a matter of like the Hong Kong spin, like figuring out how to do that predictably.
Yeah.
Because it's a 1.5 to your back. So you could do it on concrete, do it off of something, the back fall, like how not to hit your head. There's just a lot of little, pieces to these things. Becomes its own art form.
Yeah, and they're pieces that we don't see the audience often. We just see it as a final completed picture, and that all the puzzle pieces are in place and we can just see the pretty picture and it all works out for us. And not, sometimes we don't consider all the little tiny, like you say, like words and sentences that are in this language that we're seeing, I think that's that's something to take. I don't necessarily analyze fights, but I certainly absorb them. I will say that, or I try to. I try to really take in the movement and enjoy it for I keep going back to the word poetry of it or beauty of it. And I think there's something in Kung Fu cinema, and I've had this conversation with other people. And I always say you either get it or you don't, which sounds terrible, really. But for some people, you sit them in front of an old school 1979, or not even that, a 1985, whatever film, like Hong Kong action film. You sit them in front of it and it just doesn't work for them. It just doesn't click. And yet there's people like us who see it and just see the magic in it. I think that's interesting. I wonder what that is. I wonder what that is that just it either clicks or it doesn't with people. I'm kind of fascinated by that.
Yeah. What do you think they're looking at?
I don't know. They're not seeing something, right? And it's I don't know. I'm fascinated by that. What aren't they seeing that people like we are? And I know, again, that sounds pretentious, like people like us. But I'm not trying to say that. Just sometimes it just doesn't work for someone. I'm like, what is it in your brain? What are you seeing that I'm not seeing? And what am I seeing that you're not seeing?
Right.
I don't know. I'm kind of fascinated by that. Like it's it's not a gene or it's not in our DNA. It's just, it's understanding visual motion or poetry or movement, whatever you want to call it. And I guess, but then I guess some people get poetry and others don't,
Right.
It's like that with music. I guess we've said it before, but I'm almost incredulous when people don't understand Kung Fu films.
I know, it's
I'm
hard
like, why don't you see it? Why can't you see the beauty of, the Jackie Chan against the 4 Amazon women in Armor of God? How do you not see the beauty in this fight scene?
Yeah, I wonder if it's kind of like, Ginger Rogers and Fred Astaire, where, there's just a generational gap. And I don't know if it's a language thing. Like maybe this is a language thing where I mentioned in the book a couple times about the Born Identity and how, Born Identity, I believe, works for people because it happened after 9/11. And I think that there might be like certain strands of thought, people of certain attention, whatever, certain attention patterns that are tuned into a certain kind of thing. And maybe they don't respond to Armor of God, but they respond to Jason Bourne with that pen.
Yes.
And that all this. They see like a guy who's thinking, and he does a thing, and this guy pulls it out, and then you see a leg break, and you see this punch, but then it cuts to this punch. Makes no sense. And in the end, they think back and they go, "Yeah, that was good," because it matches something that happened that I'm, and I don't know if that's entirely 9/11. I'm reluctant to attribute it to just one event, but my gut tells me that like big events in mass media do sort of alter how people perceive media.
Yeah, I would say so. It's interesting that some people would say that the Bourne identity, or even any other Bourne film, fights are more realistic.
Right.
They'll use that word, realistic. And when you think about it, they're really not. They're doing exactly what a Hong Kong action film in the 80s are doing. There's an exchange there, and it's equally as, whatever you want to call it, silly, unrealistic as each other. The movement's going on. Jason Bourne, his fight skills probably don't work in a real life setting, but they think it does. But yet seeing Jackie Chan do his, or Samo, whoever do his, it doesn't. They go, no, that's not real. So it's fake. That's what I hear a lot of. But you get that on Twitter all the time. Post a fight scene and someone's like, "Oh, dude, this isn't real. You need to train in MMA." It's like, it's entertainment. What are you doing? Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, but I think you're right. I think certain personal histories, personal events, life events, media events, whatever they are, they inform our view on, perhaps if we're saying it informs our view on violence in general, how we perceive violence, whether that's real violence or on screen.
Yeah,
it's an interesting thing to explore a little bit.
Yeah.
We'll go ahead and wrap it up here if that's okay with you.
Yes.
I'd like to thank you so much, because this has been such an amazing conversation. I could honestly talk to you for another 2 hours. I'm not going to lie. And if you would ever like to come back on again, I would love to have you on.
Yeah, that's tomorrow.
I'm actually free tomorrow too. Again, everyone, get out and buy it. It's on Amazon right now, in both Kindle form and paperbook form. So yeah, it's well worth the read, because it not only, I'm probably selling this very badly, but it not only gives you a history of Eric's journey and where he's been as a martial artist, fighter, stunt person, and now, what do you call yourself now? A philosopher? A scientist?
Wandering swordsman.
A scholar, perhaps? A scholar of violence? That's a good title.
Yeah, they'll never let me into that building.
But it's a delightful read, and honestly, when you start reading about Roba, it all clicks. It all makes sense. At first, I was a bit worried that I'm too dumb to understand it, but you word it in such a fashion that it just all makes perfect sense. And
I'm glad to hear that. Thank you.
Yeah, I know, it's wonderful, really, really. So thank you very much, everyone. Thank you so much for watching. I really, really appreciate you. Go over to Eric's channel. Where can they find you? Is it just all across the board everywhere?
Yeah, you can find me on YouTube at Eric Jacobus Official. I'm on Instagram at Eric Jacobus Official.
Wonderful.
And those are the big ones. Yeah. And I have a blog, ericjacobus.com, and I'll be posting updates there about my next books.
Oh, you're writing again?
Yes.
Oh, fascinating. A similar topic or something?
Yeah, I want to drill in. I'm going to drill into movement language, and I'm going to write some fiction too.
Oh man, that excites me. That excites me very much. I'm very much looking forward to that. So go out, find Eric online, watch all his stuff, read all his stuff. Thank you everyone for watching, and I will catch you next time.
Bye.